what does it take to become a comic book artist? What are the traits that we need to develop? What do you need to do if this is something that you're looking to do? Now, this could either be as a full-time career. You might be beginning and saying, hey, I want to be a comic book artist. What do I need to do? What's important? You also might be someone who's an artist working in a different field and you want to do a comic and you're thinking, can I do it? What do I need? I think it's really important to consider, if you're thinking about doing something with your art, what is it like to actually do it, and what sort of skills and personality traits do you need to develop and work on? I think there's 3 really important key personality traits or things that we can work on to up our comic book game, and in this video I'm going to share them with you. Let's get started. Just quickly, my name's Tim McBurney. I've been a professional working artist for 20 years, and I spent a large portion of that working as a comic book artist. I worked in the French comic book industry, and now I mostly work as a concept artist in the video game industry. But comics are near and dear to my heart, and it's a big part of what I'm about on this channel. I'm here to help you draw cool stuff from your imagination, because I think that's often what comics are about, and I'm here to help you embrace the challenge of drawing, because comics require a lot of drawing. You've kind of got to enjoy doing it. That's actually one of the points here. And the third thing that I like to do here on this channel is help us master the craft of line and color illustration, which again is a major part of comic books. All right, the first thing that I think is really, really important to develop is the idea of patience. Comic books takes a lot of work. Creating pages takes a lot of work and a lot of time. And I don't know whether you have to be like a dyed-in-the-wool introvert to be a comic book artist, but I certainly imagine that a lot of comic book artists kind of have a strong streak of introversion where you're kind of happy sitting by yourself or just kind of hanging out alone and drawing all the time. Now, you might, be someone who likes to hang out with other people, and I know that people, comic book artists do often develop little studios with each other so they can sort of talk and chat and do that kind of thing all day. But again, either way, you have to manage the fact that you're just going to be sitting down at a Wacom tablet or a drawing table in some way, shape, or form and drawing for a huge amount of your day and your life. And it does take a lot of patience. It's something that I think often I hear about when people say, hey, I want to be a comic book artist. And I hear this from students a lot. Again, I've been teaching people how to draw comics for quite a while, and people they're all keen about it until they do it. And then they're like, oh man, this is a lot of work. There's just so much drawing here. And it's like, yeah, you'll be drawing all day for months and months on end. And if you're just you're not coloring or writing or creating other elements of it, you'll be doing that a lot, all the time. And I think that the way that I dealt with this is, again, to really just embrace the cathartic sort of aspect of that. There is a level of relaxation once you get sort of quite, comfortable with your style, your working process. It's understanding that the day and your week has sort of ups and downs, right? And it's also a matter of sort of balancing when you maybe do the boring, not necessarily boring, but again, the cathartic, repetitive drawing tasks where you're sort of rendering trees, you're rendering buildings, you're just sort of filling in the background. There are other elements where you're, laying out the story. You might be, if you're coloring it, you might be doing the flatting for the colors. But there's a lot of elements here where you're just kind of sitting down and doing stuff and wading through it for a long time. And I think you need to develop some sense of sort of patience or some way of dealing with that. A lot of people, again, might watch movies while they do the boring stuff. They listen to audiobooks, listen to podcasts, whatever it is. I know a lot of comic book people listen to a lot of podcasts, right? We're just sitting there drawing all day. So if you want to do this, you have to be prepared for that. A lot of your life as a comic book artist is you staring at the page and just happily drawing away, and that can be a big shock for people. And I think that for me, it is just a matter of kind of understanding that, that's just what happened. And sometimes I'd be like, man, I've just got to, draw for the next week. I'm just inking or doing some, sort of finished line work for the next week. And that's where, again, you go and watch, the entire Lord of the Rings extended edition and all the special features. And you're like, okay, that's like sort of 30 hours. I can sort of do that and sort of render trees or leaves or do something like that. You can listen to audiobooks, you can do that. But at its core, there's ways of dealing with the boredom of it, right? When you're doing that, because again, if you don't have any stimulus, it is a lot of sort of quite mundane work, but also embracing, as I said, the catharsis of it, the relaxation of it, just the purity of sitting down and drawing and sort of, thinking about things. It can be a really relaxing, nice thing to do. And I found that as long as I approach it in the right way, I really actually ended up enjoying it quite a bit. And again, you have tactics to deal with that. But at its core, just remember, you're going to be sitting down a lot. You kind of got to deal with that. And you kind of got to know yourself. Are you the kind of person who does that? Do you need to be chatting away to someone? Do you need to be changing what you're doing? That may not work for comics. You need a lot of patience, right? It's pretty simple. If you want to hear a little bit about my journey, you can check out my free illustration mini workshop, which goes over many of the trials and tribulations I went through to become a professional comic book artist. I also talk about how to get more detail and polish on your work and how to think about starting to consider working professionally, especially when you take it from an illustration, image making standpoint. Go check it out. Link will be in the description. It's free. The second trait that I think is really important, and it's something I see in most comic book artists that I know, is that we have a real passion for story. And I think if you're interested in comics, there's much better ways for you to create interesting projects and things if you just kind of want to draw cool stuff, lots of action scenes and dynamic images. There's better industries to work in if that's sort of what you want to do. At its core, the thing that's so unique about comic books is that it's a visual storytelling medium where you can see the vision from a single person or a few people. That's really special. And the more you lean into that, I feel like the better success overall you're going to have. Apart from that, it's just something I see most comic book artists are really interested in. It's the visual storytelling ideas, the written storytelling ideas, the concept of visual storytelling, of film language, of how stuff works from scene to scene transitions, shot composition, all of these things, and the way that story is built, the pacing, all of these concepts that, again, if you're just watching movies and you're just consuming stuff, you're not going to pick up. But comic book artists develop, and if you want to become one, you're also going to need to really dive into the idea of visual storytelling, understanding the language of it, and developing a passion for it. This is where, again, once you really get into this, you never watch movies in quite the same way, because you understand what's happening, that this is a series of shots and we're building and telling a story. We have establishing shots, simple dialogue shots, we have transitions, and all of these things affect the mood. The pacing of comics is obviously very different. It's a different medium to film, but again, it's a matter of understanding what is actually happening with panel composition, how that story is told, how to compress, how to decompress points, how to get emotion across through the page. These are all things that have to do with story, capital S story. And it's not just a matter of sort of writing and plots and stuff. It's a matter of understanding visual storytelling, the language of how people understand a story through watching a visual medium like comics or film, etc. The third thing that I think is really, really important is that comic book artists like to draw. And I think even some of them who sort of say they don't like to draw or struggle with that part of it, I think they like to draw a lot more than your average artist. A lot of artists sort of have an emotional response to the drawing that can be sort of mixed. It can be positive or negative. And I think you can have people who still develop quite high levels of professionalism in different art fields, but they maybe still have a bit of fear of drawing, right? The process has some trepidation to it. I think it's so important as a comic book artist to love drawing and to understand that you're going to be doing a lot of it. And for me personally, when I started drawing comic books professionally, it really rid me of all the fear of drawing because I just had to do it so much. So this is something that, again, you need to develop it, and the only way you can develop that is by just doing it a lot and understanding that, again, much of the way that you enjoy it is through improving the way that your art and your lines express yourself, and to make sure that you actually enjoy the style that you're working in. It can be as simple as that. A lot of people are taking on styles or doing things they maybe don't want to do, or, you really need to love the style you're working in. You need to love the subject matter you're doing because you just have to do so much of it. And I think if you can really master this trait, to really embrace that challenge of drawing and the fun of drawing, and to make that part of who you are, it'll help you a huge amount when it comes to drawing comics, because at its core, people can feel when we like drawing. They can feel when we enjoy it. They can feel when we're excited about it. This is different to other industries or careers like concept art, which I also do, where sometimes we need to do something because the project kind of tells us to. It's a design process, and maybe I don't 100%, that's not what I want to do at my core, but I'll do it because I know how to do it and other people are excited about it. And, when I do it, other people are enthusiastic and the project moves forward. None of that happens in comics. It's me and the page, and if I don't enjoy putting down every line, if I don't enjoy that process and the fun of drawing, then it kind of makes the whole thing not quite as fun. And I think it's just at that point where we're sort of pushing stuff uphill. Now, as I said with some of the other things, this is an aspect of my own craft that I sort of developed through drawing the comics. It wasn't something where I was like, oh, I love drawing. I sit down and I'm like, oh, I was meant to be a comic book artist. Hell no. I started being a comic book artist and it was rough, right? I was being a comic book artist and it was not always the most fun, right? In the beginning, certainly. And part of my journey was understanding how to enjoy that, how to actually make that fun, and how to embrace the day-to-day just sort of drawing and developing my style and making sure that what I was doing was connected to the type of personality that I actually wanted to get down on the page. It's a really, really tricky thing. It's not something where, again, you can get it right, as I said, on the first go, but I know that a lot of people struggle with this, and if you're maybe an artist who's working in a different field, you want to draw a comic, all I'd say is just stay the course, right? I think that comics can really rid us of a lot of fear of drawing and help us enjoy the process of actually enjoy drawing, because you tend to, again, have a stylistic response to that, where you'll probably have ways of drawing that are a little bit more fun, a little bit more fluid. They match the level of detail, the level of polish, the level of everything, the level of expression that you have with the line. And the more you kind of explore that through drawing comics, the more your relationship to drawing itself becomes stronger and more true. So again, hard one to kind of give a good sort of tip for besides do it, trust the process. I think that it's really important to at least aspire to and move towards being passionate and positive about drawing, so that eventually we're sort of doing this thing all day, as I said, and you enjoy it. It's fun. You actually love to draw. Okay, so those are the three things. We need to have at least some inherent version of introversion that we can rely on, or just an understanding that we need a lot of patience to do comics. Just sitting down, drawing the same thing again and again and again, and I think that can really work for someone. The second thing is that we need to understand and appreciate story. And the third, as I just said, is that we need to love the process of drawing. I've got a fourth bonus one, which I think is also related to this and kind of important. And that's that comics is, I think, a really good medium where you can express some form of individuality. I don't know whether this is because we do sit at home at drawing tables all day, and you have a lot of time to really focus on the books you want to read, the podcasts you want to listen to. You get a lot of opportunity to meditate on yourself and, express yourself through these pages and keep yourself interested by injecting little bits and pieces into them. But either way, I think a lot of the comic book artists that I know are quite individualistic, that they are a little bit more like your capital A artist. They have unique passions, unique things. They think differently to each other. You can especially see this, if you look at a lot of the documentaries that cover how Japanese manga artists create their work. It's all different. Everyone is unique, and yet they can all do the same thing. And I think it's a really good thing to embrace about comics, that if you're interested in developing your individuality, you're just one of those people who kind of maybe thinks a little bit different, that's kind of okay. It's actually a good thing to do that in comics. And sort of if you're just wanting to sort of fit, be a cog in a machine, there's probably other industries that are better for you than that. The entertainment industry is much more where you work in teams with people and you sort of get told what to do. To a certain degree, when you're drawing comics, it is about your individuality, your artistry, your thoughts, your ideas. They are actually important. And I think from a career perspective, long term, the more you build on that and develop that as part of your own personal brand, or whatever you want to sort of call it, just what people think of when they think of you and your art, it can actually help you in the long run to develop yourself as an individual and become someone who has unique opinions, unique thoughts on, film and drawing and art and all that kind of stuff. So again, it's just a small point, but it is worth considering. It is an industry or a practice that can really be a good outlet for individuality, and it can actually be a good way to build and understand yourself on a very, very deep level. Anyway, that's all I've got. 3 or 4 quick tips. Let me know if these have been helpful. If you got any others, if you're a professional comic book artist and you've got any thoughts on this, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. But other than that, that's all I've got. Thanks for hanging out. Happy drawing.